Hi, today I wanted to make a video answering the most Googled questions about trichotillomania alongside some questions that I have been asked myself that weren't included in the Google questions. So I've got my notes in front of me, so I'm going to be looking down a bit. So I just typed the word in trichotillomania along with various other words such as when, who, how, just to see what the most Googled questions were. And in no particular order, here are the questions. So how to stop or treat trichotillomania. So I wouldn't put too much pressure on yourself to stop, especially by going cold turkey. I just don't think that would work. It has never worked for me in the past. I have stopped for a long period before, but I did absolutely nothing to help my mental health at that time or habit training or anything like that, and it did eventually come back, which was inevitable, I believe. So the best ways to treat it are various different ways. The mental side of it, definitely to do CBT or counselling. You can use online services like BetterHelp. I've not used them before, but I've heard they're a cheaper alternative, and using video calls, which is what we'd have to do now anyway during this pandemic. Or you could find someone locally when you can meet face to face. Maybe you could meet them or do it over the phone. And I think that kind of helps get to the root of maybe why you do it. I'm not saying everyone does it for a particular reason, but I think often there is a reason, and sometimes working on the mental side of things will just help you reduce that, because you do tend to pull more when you're anxious or stressed, things like that. And then there are things that you could physically do to reduce it. So when I'm not wearing toppers, I will wrap my hair in a hearscarf. I've bought finger grips as recommended by Bourbon Bites and Beauty. I'm trying those out. Various fidget toys. I've done another video on different things you can do just to physically not be able to get to your head, or to reduce that habit side of things and not the mental side. So the second question is how to pronounce. So it's Trichotillomania, and it's really long and really silly. It doesn't need to be that long. And one of the other Google questions was, when was it first diagnosed? And I might do a video on this in itself, because there's actually quite a lot of information that I found about early instances of hair pulling and early references as far back as Greek philosophers and the Bible and William Shakespeare. But I've got a definition here that says the term trichotillomania was derived from the Greek words for hair, to pull, and madness. And that's why I don't like the mania side of thing, because you aren't mad because you pull your hair out. So the term was conceived in 1889, so a very, very different time, a very long time ago, by the French dermatologist Francois Henry, I'm going to just destroy this last name, Halopou. So it was 1889, so it was a long time ago, but I do think it would be nice to have a different name, but I guess that's the name we've got for it now, so other people might not feel as strongly about that as me. So the next question was how to grow your hair back. So this is a difficult one. At the moment my hair is actually really short because I've been pulling so much before I started this account. I'd basically given up, and I have patches and short hair, so I just cut it all to be one length. The best way to grow it back is to reduce as much as possible. I don't do anything. I know that people try things like castor oil and things. I think that might work for them. I haven't tried that. I can't say either way whether it works well, but the best way to grow your hair back is to just work on reducing it as much as possible, whether that is through counselling, CBT, medication, maybe, you know, if you've got anxiety, medication for anxiety, that could be a doctor, speaking to your doctor about that, or just literally just wrapping your head up and making sure you cannot get to that hair. How common is it? So I did look this up, and I had looked at this before. I've heard that it's anywhere from 1 to 2% of the population, which is a lot if you think about, I've said this before, you think about you've got 200 Facebook friends, that means up to 4 to 8 of them, is that right? So no, 4 of them about will have trich, which is quite a lot when you think about it, because you know quite a lot of people, more than you realise. But it may even be more than that, because there's such a shame and stigma around it. People keep it to themselves and think they're the only person in the world. So there are probably hundreds and hundreds of people out there who have trichotillomania, have no idea what it is, and think they're the only person in the world that suffers with it. So they're not going to be part of the statistics. Next question, how it starts. So I imagine this is different for everybody, but I think it starts as something smaller and develops into pulling your hair out. So for me, it was playing with my hair. I only realised recently I've always had nervous, like do that and bite the skin off the inside of my mouth, which sounds really aggressive, but it doesn't hurt. It's just like a tiny bit of skin. And I used to bite my mouth a lot when I was a kid. I never bit my nails, but I know it develops from biting nails for some people. And then I started to like play with the back of my hair, and I was actually snapping it in half. So that's another form of trick. You don't have to pull it out from the root for it to be trick, you know. And that's how it started for me, and then eventually it did turn into hair pulling. And that's the physical way that it starts, and the mental side of things can be this. There's another question here that what causes it, so it's combining these two questions. It's different for everybody. So there's research to suggest that it's caused by a trauma, but I know there are people out there that have trichotillomania that haven't experienced any particular trauma that comes to mind that makes them think they started. I imagine people who start as young as 4 or 5 most of them won't have experienced a trauma. I have anxiety, and I've always been, my entire life, that I did experience trauma. I was bullied, and I do think that's why mine started, and also as a result of hormones, because I sort of hit puberty around the same age, and I think just a combination of those things, being an anxious person, is why it started for me. But I think that I've always been an anxious person and a worrier. That's what the words used to be in the 90s and the early 2000s. I was a worrier. I always worried about everything, and I was just born that way. I have a sister. She had exactly the same environment as me growing up. Parents treated us both equally, and she's completely different to me. She's not a worrier. So it's not something, I don't believe, that I learned as a behaviour. It's something that is biologically within me. And it's a combination of all those things, which is what causes it and how it starts. How to know if I have trichotillomania. So I guess the obvious sign of trichotillomania is pulling any hair out on your body from either the root, or like I say, snapping the ends, or like peeling split ends. So it's kind of like manipulating the hair to negatively impact on that hair, I guess. And it could be anywhere on your body. So I just pull from my scalp, but you know, a lot of people pull from their eyelashes and eyebrows, and I know that other various, you know, from their arms and things like that. But if I were you and you're not 100% sure, I would speak to a doctor, though I've been to the doctor many times. It is getting better, and when I used to go, they'd never heard of it, so I'm not necessarily sure that is the best way. But you could like research. Don't get too deep into the research, because God knows what you'll find on there. You know, things can be a bit grim on the internet, and it always sounds worse than it is. So I'd make a doctor's appointment if you're not 100% sure, and see if they have any ideas. But you know, reaching out to this community might be a good shout as well, and seeing if anyone has any followers. Maybe there are some people who have thousands of followers, just saying, you know, if you had any followers that have mentioned this to you, and see. So that's a good way. Triggers. So you can pretty much do it anytime. I don't think anything particular has to trigger it for me, like a pulling session. More so when I'm anxious, but I'm an anxious person, so I'm anxious a lot, even when there's nothing to be anxious about. I've got butterflies now. I spend most of my life with butterflies. And when you're bored, so it's basically about overstimulation and understimulation. So it's if you're feeling overstimulated or understimulated, it's a way to level out that stimulation for you. So I think that's what kind of triggers it. So it can be pretty much anything. I do it more when I'm anxious, but I also do it when I'm the opposite, which is bored. Though boredom can make you anxious. What is trichotillomania categorised as? So it's categorised as a body-focused repetitive behaviour, a BFRB. So it's basically like dermatillomania. Is that, I'm sorry if I've pronounced that wrong, but skin picking, that's the same thing. So anything that's you do to your body repeatedly, that's what it's classed as. What medication? So I've not heard of any specific medication. I don't think it exists that's meant for trichotillomania specifically, but if you think your medication, if you think your trick is caused by anxiety or depression, you could take antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. The best thing to do would be to speak to your doctor about that, though that isn't the same for everyone. Not everyone needs medication, and medication won't necessarily help. It might help other aspects of your life though. Why does trichotillomania feel good? So it's really difficult to explain. I couldn't have put this into words without the help of seeing all these videos in this community. But the reason I think it feels so good, and from hearing what other people, is because when you're anxious or when you're nervous or when something's happening, you feel this sort of almost subconscious kind of building of tension in your body, and you feel it, and it's almost like it's manifested in pulling out your hair. So it's like you build up the tension and the hair releases that tension. So I've heard that as a theory as why it feels good, and also because it's about gaining control. I've heard that, so a lot of mental health problems are about a lack of control, whether that be depression, anxiety, anything really like that. So it's about, this is something that you're in control of and you're doing, and it's the same thing really, it's like tension release. I think that might be it. I've written, why does trichotillomania exist, but I guess I can't really exactly answer that question. No one really knows why we do it. There's not like a scientific benefit of pulling your hair out, I don't think. I think it is purely a self-soothing act, like I say. I know that other species of animals do it. Chimps have done it. Baby chimps do it when they're taken from their mothers at a young age. So it is clearly like an act of self-soothing. And if I did a video more about the history of it, I'm looking here because it's written here. It is mentioned by early philosophers and things. It's like when people are frustrated. So I think it is purely just like a release of tension and a release of energy and emotion. So there are some questions I've written here that weren't on that list that I've been asked. So I haven't been asked this question for many, many years, but when I was younger I used to get asked this all the time: why don't you just stop? If it was that simple, I would, I promise you. Do you think I want to do this? No, I don't. It's like saying to someone with depression or anxiety, why don't you just worry less? Why don't you just have a positive outlook on life, think positive thoughts? Why don't you just cheer up? It's just not as simple as that. Never ask that question, because it's impossible just to stop because you feel like it, or it wouldn't be an issue. Is it caused by anxiety? So for me, yes, I don't think it was necessarily triggered by anxiety, but I do think if I didn't have generalized anxiety disorder, I don't think I would have trichotillomania personally. Though I would be really interested to hear, do you have trichotillomania and not have anxiety? Because I would really love to hear if you know, if anyone doesn't. I know anxiety is very common these days, so it'd be really interesting to hear if anyone out there actually just does it and they're not an anxious sort of person or worrier. So for me, yes, it is caused by anxiety. Do you only do it when you're stressed, or is it a stress related thing? This question and the last one are two things that I've been asked a lot more, like by hairdressers and friends, as I've been telling people. Yes, I do it when I'm stressed, but I also do it when I'm not stressed, like I explained earlier. It is about releasing tension. So I think it is related to my emotions and feelings, but it's not the way, the old-fashioned phrase like it makes you tear your hair out. I think that's kind of why people think of that. It's not like, oh my god, I'm so stressed, just like pull my hair out. It's a bit different to that, as it might have picked up earlier on in the video. So those are just some questions. I hope they answered something. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions that you want to ask me about trichotillomania, please feel free to comment or message me anytime, and I'd really like to help. Thank you for watching.